Vikki and I really appreciate us that you guys have made the trip. Some of you from quite far away, so we really appreciate it. So I would like to start off by saying that this is Katy Cox, and this is her meetup, and this is her first in-person one.
She's graciously allowed us to commandeer
her house, her car,
all the things today.
So we're going to start off, and we're going to have a little presentation. So Vikki and I are going to go back and forth, and then we're going to introduce a special guest at the end and let them talk for a minute or two. So I just want to say that this is kind of like a typical, Crystal is a girl who I am really good friends with. She lives in North Dakota, and she's somebody who went from $100 to a six-figure business in less than 5 years. And it's called The Finery. You could look it up online if you wish. It's a really good, solid used clothing business. So depending on what you're trying to do, what your focus is, it's just sometimes a really great to be able to look at somebody and go in and look at their business and think they know what they're doing it well. She's gone from her house to a warehouse, unlike me and Vic, who have all the stuff in our house.
Or a 16-foot truck.
Or a 6-foot truck outside. So my store is Super Sale Trish. I have been reselling for about 8 years, 7 years full-time last year. So I do work for List Perfectly. I do not resell full-time anymore. My daughter runs my business. So, but for me, I went from a very failing consignment store to I bought a very, very, very bad business decision all around, and I turned that into a business. And then I thought, once I'm done with this clothing, I'll never touch it anymore. I actually used to tell people I was going to be a nudist because I hated clothes so much. And at the end of my little bit of a journey, I said to my husband, I came downstairs one day and I said, I got to figure out how to buy clothes. And he said, you have lost your mind. So I have 11,000 pieces of used clothing in my house. And I don't use a warehouse or a storage facility because of the money involved. I have a big house. I just partition it off. Nobody needs to see it if they don't want to. And so for me, it was more important to have it in my house and save the money than do the warehouse like Crystal did. Miss Vic.
So my store is LVPinkPeacock. I have been selling since 1997, 1998 on eBay. And I was a mortgage broker. That was my world. I was a mortgage broker, and I worked in banking and finance, and I did that for 15 years. And then 2008 happened, and some of you may or may not know there was a mortgage banking crisis, and everything just went to hell. So I had already been selling for quite a while, but it was my part-time money. It was fun money. It was vacation money. I liked to flip things. I would go to auctions. I started in Rhode Island, which is where I'm from. And I sold antiques and collectibles because, you go to a garage sale and everything there was 100 years old and it was 25 cents. So I decided to go full time. I said, this can't be that hard. I was already making, $30,000 a year part-time, very part-time. And I said, all I got to do is work a little harder at this. I can replace my income. Well, it did. I had very good income as a mortgage broker. Let's just put it that way. Those earlier years were very good. So it did take me a lot longer than I thought to get to where I needed to be. But I did eventually replace the majority of my income and then exceed it. It took me a while. I started out, I have about 5,000 listings in my store, and I try to stay around 5,000. I am now incorporating another 5,000 items that I just picked up in Boston, which is part of this whole road trip. So I'm essentially doubling my inventory very quickly, which I would not be able to do, without the generous donation of the goods from Diane and her family, but also without List Perfectly. Diane's inventory was all listed online and all listed in List Perfectly, and that is one thing that is really beneficial when you're purchasing or acquiring a large inventory. If that person or you has List Perfectly, with just a few clicks you can import their items. I don't need to photograph these items. I don't need to take measurements on these items. I just need to figure out what I have there and where her listings are and import them. So it's a few steps, but a lot fewer steps than if I were just bulk purchasing 5,000 items.
And I also think that if it's not already an LP, you can put it in very quickly and then
if you have LP. Yeah. Somebody has to have it. Either
No. But I just meant the person who you're buying your inventory from doesn't have to.
No, because I've actually done this 2 other times, and neither one of those sellers were List Perfectly users. They just had to give me their logon information to their stores, which they can go and change their passwords after. I'm not robbing anybody blind. but it was very easy to just transfer that information. If I didn't have those resources, I'm not so sure I would take on this endeavor because it's a lot. I, like Trish, keep everything in my house. Fortunately, we have a very big house. My wife, Katy, and I both are resellers. We have 2 separate businesses. She has about 4,000 items. I have 5,000 items. We do not commingle them because we would murder each other. So we need to run our businesses separately because we do it very differently. And we met each other. We were both already established resellers. And I do things way differently than she does and vice versa.
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about how we do things. So smart hiring. I think Vic and I both, over the years, we've both hired VAs and in-person people to do things. Right now, what do you have?
Right now, I have a VA that strictly does my cross-posting, very inexpensively, virtual, far away. They don't have to be there. It's just, they probably spend 15 minutes a day doing cross-posting for me, but it's 15 minutes I don't have to spend. And then I have an in-person lister who's on hiatus right now because I don't need her to do these listings coming in. But thankfully I didn't put her out of a job. I was just a side gig for her. But I do what Trish does. She actually was the one that convinced me to hire an in-person assistant a few years ago. And I pay $3 an item. She picks up, she drops off, she photographs, she takes measurements, she does a rough draft and does all, according to what I want. And then I just create the pricing and tweak the title and make it live.
And that's basically what I do also, except for now it's my daughter. So everything is still in-house. We do have one other person who will pick up when we have extra stuff. And the $3 a listing. And I just have it ready in an IKEA tote or a LP tote or an eBay tote, depending on which tote I'm using that day. And they just pick it up and then they bring it back to me all bagged, tagged, skewed and everything. That's the way that we do it. So, one of the things I wrote about sourcing strategies, and I just wanted to point out that Crystal has a 6-figure business and she lives in North Dakota. Okay, so if somebody who lives in North Dakota,
where there is nothing.
What?
I said I used to live there.
Yeah, okay, so, nothing.
There's nothing there, right?
So if you lived in North Dakota and you can do this, we can do this, right? Especially on the Northeast. I think our sourcing is better than even Vegas.
100% I agree. 100% I agree. My business would be entirely different if I lived in the Northeast still than it is now. Actually, I probably wouldn't even sell clothing. I would probably still be selling antiques and collectibles.
Right. And so I do think, where you are can make a big difference in what you sell. And I also would say, Vicki and I are driving across the country because it was a good deal. Sometimes it's worth traveling. Sometimes it's worth doing the hard things because it really can make a big difference in your business. Inventory management, Vicki and I have very, very, very different.
We're gonna let you
ideas
talk about this.
About that.
Do as I say, not as I do.
Let's just say this.
One of us has an inventory system, one of us does not.
Okay, so Vic, I love Vic, but if Vic was to get hit by a bus tomorrow,
As Trish is wont to say.
I say this all the time, if you get hit by a bus, what would happen to you? What would happen to your store? Would it continue? Could somebody else come into your house? Could somebody else go into your inventory and could they figure out what they need to ship? Could they?
No.
Yes.
No.
You need
Yes.
to change that.
I'm with Vicki. Yes.
So
Katy
Vic-
could. To be fair, Katy is the only one that knows my system like I do.
But for 2 girls who are together all the time, we all know the bus is going to hit them both. And then
Then we're done. There's a problem then.
so
Then my
while,
poor kid will
while
need
you have a very broken leg and you were recuperating in the hospital, I'm not killing
Oh,
off
thank you. You
anybody.
didn't kill me. I only
No,
got a broken leg.
no,
Just
you
leave.
didn't
Appreciate
die.
that.
We're just recuperating. Can somebody go into your house and figure it out? Any one of you guys could come to my house and pull my 11,000 items, okay? There's a key, a master key. You got 26, AB 42, right? You'd look for where AB is. It would say shelf 2 in the parlor. Now, might take you a minute to figure out what part of my house is the parlor, but you would figure it out. And then you go to shelf, AB, you would pull it out. There's 2 AB buckets. There's one, you'd go in there till you saw 42, you would pull it out. Anyone could do my inventory system. So I am not saying you have to use my inventory system. LP has an inventory system built in. I'm not saying you have to use that. I don't care if you make up your own. All I care about is that I really think everyone needs an inventory system. I've been telling her this for 7 years.
And I will say the smaller your inventory is, that's when you need to start. Start from the beginning because this is my big problem with it. It's not that I'm against having an inventory system. It's that I don't want to take a month to go retro and figure it out about that 5,000 items. But also, I will say what Trish says, start from where you are and you can start doing it from there.
I want her to start right now on the new items, right? She's getting this truckload.
Listen, she's coming to my house for a week or two after this, and I have a feeling I'm going to have an inventory system by the time she leaves.
Because it's so, I mean, there are a few things that I believe in a lot, and I talk every day. There's a few of you guys in here who come to my mastermind class, and I talk about account health, and part of that account health is having the inventory system. If you cannot find your item on eBay, that is the biggest sin on eBay. That is the cardinal sin on eBay. Canceling an order. You don't want to cancel an order.
Now, to be fair, that doesn't happen very often for me. So even though I don't have a system, I'm not canceling orders, and my account health is just fine.
Yeah, okay. So, inventory pick list optimization, all I'm saying is if you are going to do it, so for me, mine is not in alphabetical order. Some of you guys would come into my house and that would make you crazy, but my husband put away the inventory, and he didn't like having A and AA and AB and BB all next to each other because he threw it in the wrong bucket. So do what works for whoever is putting it away. Do it so it's easy. Do it. Doesn't have to make sense to everybody, as long as you have a master key and everybody can find it, right? Doesn't have to, you have to make sure the optimization is for you and how you work. And so if you're somebody who, some people do it in numerical, thank you, order, and they condense, right? Miss Patty does that. I don't, I backfill. Okay, so I backfill numbers. So I'm using the same SKU number and over again, and I'm backfilling. Maybe you never want to repeat it. You just have to figure out what works for you and that you can live with it. Feedback and account health. Okay, so account health is something that I am obsessed with because, especially on eBay, I think it's very, very important, and eBay does not give us enough tools or enough strategies to do well at this if you don't know it. And so for me, maintaining a strong seller account is extremely important. You should always know what your INAD rate is. You should always know what your I'm sorry, I got a little distracted by Alan walking in, but I'm very glad he's here. So, you know, maintaining a small account, a strong account health is very important to me. And so if you do not know what your INAD rate is, before you leave here tonight, come up and see me, and I'm going to show you how to find it on your phone, because it's that important. Because if you do not know what this is, you can get charged with a 5% surcharge on eBay, and not
on
only
every sale.
No, more than that. On every piece of every shipping thing you buy, everything. It is everything you pay. It's
I didn't even know that.
Ask Susie.
Ask Susie, exactly right. It's every single thing that you pay, you know, all the way across the board. And then let's talk about feedback for a minute. Don't sweat about feedback. It's not that big of a deal.
It's an antiquated system. Feedback is, you know, eBay was built on feedback. We all know that. If you know the eBay story, that's how it was started. It was a good relationship, faith-based type of transactions between individuals. It was, you know, all of that is all well and good. In this day and age, it's not necessary. And you'll find that maybe 20% of your buyers are going to leave feedback, maybe. First thing I will say, automate your own feedback. Make sure that you do that through don't waste time. Don't be like, I'm going to do it when they pay, or I'm going to do it after they get the item received. Don't babysit. You don't need to micromanage your accounts like that. You can never do anything but leave positive feedback for your buyers anyway, so just take it out of your hands, one less thing off your checklist. That's my opinion on that. As far as negative feedback, respond professionally.
Again, something that Vikki says but doesn't necessarily do.
Do as I say, not as I do. Listen, I'm very snarky, and I'm going to be snarky. It's who I am. Love me or hate me, it's who I am. But not to the point where you're going to damage your account, obviously.
And I think when you answer feedback, you're not talking to the person. The person's never going to care. They're never going to look. You're talking to the person who's coming in and thinking, maybe I want to buy from you. Oh, you have 2 negatives. What is it? And when you say very nicely, I'm sorry you were not happy with that item. I take all returns, blah, 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 free returns, whatever. I would have happily given you all your money back. They look like a moron and you look completely reasonable. And that's
generally how I answer that. I mean, I'm not as snarky as I want to be. This didn't fit, they give me a negative. I'm sorry you gained 20 pounds over the holidays. That's not my fault. That's how I want to answer everyone. That's not how I answer everyone.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. I really do. List perfectly.
This is why nobody lets me talk at my own conference, because, you know, I have talked twice.
I was gonna say, I've talked twice or more, 3 times. How is this tool allowed? Finery, you know, that's Crystal's, I just would like to say, you know, she uses LP to its full advantage. She uses all the things, she knows everything, she knows how to do all the things. Okay, hiring a team, we kind of talked about that. We both use in-person, we both use virtual. And in-person staff, I guess I have that now because of my daughter. But you know, hiring people sometimes is the only way to scale. And if you want to scale, now you don't have to want to scale. Not everybody needs to scale. But if you want to scale, sometimes the only way you can do it is by hiring. And also remember that it's going to take you a little while to recoup that money.
You have to be willing to outlay the money in training and resources, especially if you're paying someone, like we said, $3 an item. I paid during the training period. I'm sure Trish does as well, trying to get people up to scale. Now, if someone is fast, that $3 an item, my last girl that worked for me was making $30 an hour. That's very reasonable for doing not very difficult work, right? It's not mind-numbing. But she would end up, you know, making about $30 an hour because she was fast. If it's somebody that goes really slow, you don't want to pay by the hour because you're eating that up, and they're, you know, there are people that are just going to milk that hourly wage. We all know it in the real world. It's not any different, you know, in the reselling world. Having someone that is willing to do that for you. The other thing I'm going to say is if you want to scale and you do hire somebody, I always say start with the task that you like the least. If you're going to outsource, don't outsource your sourcing because that's what you're the professional about, right? You can't necessarily teach that very easily. You can get there down the line. Some people outsource sourcing, but I think that's probably one of the last things to outsource. The best and easiest thing to outsource, first of all, is photos. Teaching someone how to take pictures with a cell phone is one of the easiest things that you can do. And outsourcing your photos, that's what I did. That was the thing I hated the most. I hated dressing and undressing the mannequins. I hate that. I outsourced photos and measurements. And then I built into teaching someone how to do drafts. And at first I had somebody do it at my house. I had a room and they would come and they'd work for a few hours and take pictures and things like that. And then you just figure out where you're going to trust them to go forward with your business. When you're having someone do something like that, you don't necessarily have to compromise your account. You don't have to give them your login information, none of that. eBay does have something called multi-user access that you can designate certain tasks that someone is allowed to do under a certain login. I will say it's kind of garbage. The technology on it is not great, and switching back and forth between accounts does not work properly. So in my opinion, the person that you have working for you, you're either going to use a third-party software like List Perfectly and give them your access to the List Perfectly account, or you have to trust them enough to give them the access to your eBay account, which all the people I've had work for me, I've trusted them enough to do that. But not everybody's going to do that. You got to find your comfort level with your employees. Okay, so sourcing inventory, I guess specifically in North Dakota, because this was mostly Crystal's, about Crystal, but in resource limited areas, it really was going to apply anywhere. One of the most common complaints I hear from people in my Facebook group or on our YouTube channel, or when we're talking about lives with people, I don't know, I can't find anything. My thrift stores are terrible. Everything's too high price. There's they're pricing Target clothes at $12 an item. Garage sales are 2 weeks out of the year because it's always cold and rainy or snowy. So finding ways to outsource and find inventory in different non-conventional manners, not going to a garage sale, not going to a thrift store, is something that is fairly easy to do if you're willing to put in the time and do it. Not everybody has the ability to leave their house. A lot of people work from home for a lot of different reasons. We work from home because we can't work 9-to-5 jobs somewhere. There's physical limitations, you have time restraints, you have small children at home, maybe you're dealing for an aging and ailing parent, any one of those things. So not everybody can get in the car and do a 16-foot U-Haul and take 3 weeks to drive across the country and meet all these resellers. So there's thrift and consignment stores. A lot of times you can build relationships with a consignment store or a thrift store and help take their surplus, take the stuff they don't want to deal with. Building those relationships, you have to talk. You have to be able to talk to people. Go in and talk to people. Dry cleaners. Local dry cleaner, you see a local dry cleaners have so much clothing that they end up throwing away. If someone has not already built that relationship with you. Real estate agents, people doing sales and cleanouts and estate sales. Leads me right to estate sale, people that do estate sales. A lot of estate sale companies don't want to deal with clothing. A lot of storage auction buyers do not want to deal with clothing. Go to these types of establishments and make friends with these people. A lot of, and Bill had said this earlier today actually in the mastermind call, so thank you for reminding me. Storage auctions, they want the fast money. A lot of people that are flipping storage auctions, they don't want clothes. They're just going to throw them away or you donate them. Well, take those off their hand. Maybe make an arrangement to pay something for it, and it's money that, you know, I'll give you $100 for all the clothes you find in or whatever it is. Something's better than nothing. So there are lots of different ways to do that. There's also online sourcing. There's Whatnot, there's eBay, there's all different places you can buy lots. Look for misspelled lots. Look for people that put things in auction that shouldn't be in auction so that you can, you know, snag a really good deal.
High bid.
High bid is another one. There's also, you know, estatesales.net. There's max sold in certain areas of the country. It's not in every area of the country, but what was that? Auction Zip? Yep.
Here in Transitions is another one.
That's for the estate sales mostly, like they clear out elderly people's homes and things.
You can do it online, and
Yeah.
you just go pick it up.
Yeah, that's kind of like max.
Kinda
Max
like
level.
that.
Yeah.
Get with you.
I think I've heard of that before, but I know it's not where I live. But yeah,
Yeah,
wherever
it's
you are
around here.
regionally, I mean that's the way to find those different, you know, resources. There's stuff out there. You have to dig a little, but it's out there. You know, I have very little sympathy for hearing all the time that, you know, there's nothing in my thrift store, I can't find anything to source. Well, you've got to do the work. It's not coming to you.
It can come to you. You just gotta.
You
find it.
gotta make an
Yeah.
effort first to find it.
Okay, so I just want to talk a minute about, we kind of touched on this, but I just would like to say about feedback and account health. Feedback, you do not need 100% feedback. And I was actually at a eBay sponsored thing the other day, and the director of seller engagement said that they have data that says that anyone younger than me thinks that 100% feedback is fishy. That they expect you not to have 100% feedback. They're used to Yelp. They're used to, and so that they have actual data that shows that 100% feedback, even though that's what we all want, isn't what they're looking for. And when they come in and they see 100%, they're a little turned off by it, which was
Like,
very,
why is this sketchy?
Right.
Is feedback fake? Has it been purchased like these Amazon reviews that are the, you know?
right. And even though we can't purchase them, we don't, I mean, I suppose we could have people buy things and leave us feedback.
They don't know.
They don't know that. So there's no way for us to really fudge this. And so eBay's priority is to keep you in compliance, and they are not worried about they're worried about your defect rate. They are not worried about your return rate, okay? If you have a return rate of 100% and you have great feedback, eBay does not care, as long as there's no cases opened with that returns. eBay is not worried about your return rate. They are worried about, and they're not worried about your feedback score. Now, if that means you guys were in the 60 percentile, is eBay gonna be like, what the hell are you doing? Probably, right? But if you have 95 or more, eBay doesn't think anything. It's an A. You have a solid A. Only us crazy people are like, why do they have a 96.2? You know what I mean? No one else is thinking this other than us. So don't get in your heads about that.
And don't spend hours and
Yes.
hours trying to get feedback reversed or changed or removed.
List some more crap.
Make one effort, maybe send a message to the person, see if you can accommodate them and if they'll remove the feedback. I always say at least try the one try, but don't take more than 5 minutes.
And I wouldn't be surprised if things are changing in the feedback space. So don't be surprised if things become even a little bit more regulated in that space eventually. We've heard some things that are coming down the pipe. This, though, to me, is a critical factor for your long-term success. You need to know what your key metrics are. You need to know if you're in compliance. You need to know what your INAD rate is and your defect rate. So at least once a week, I would suggest you look at your defect rate and your, you look at your INAD rate, and if you have any defects, not your defect rate, they're all different. And as long as you're within compliance, just keep going the way you're going.
As long as you're low, average, slightly above average, you're in that green and that yellow, you're good.
Yeah, if you're in the green and the yellow, don't even worry about it. Okay, so I just want you to know, so like, this is me, this was this morning, and this is my peers. So what you're supposedly being measured against is people who sell the same amount of as you, same kind of item as you are at the same velocity, okay? So nobody's comparing a used clothing seller that has 11,000 items to a used clothing seller that has 400, right? That isn't a fair comparison. So they don't tell you exactly, but it is your peers. It's supposedly within a certain amount of percentage of the same as you. What you don't want to be is in the very high for very long, because then you can get assessed
They usually give you a 30-day grace period to fix it, sometimes 60 days. You will know. You'll get the warning from eBay, you get an email, but even beyond that, you should be checking at least maybe once a week.
Yeah,
Check your account health.
I would. I think it's really important because it can all of a sudden sneak up on you. And if you do not have free returns, if you have buyer paid returns, no one in this room should have no returns. Does anyone in this room have no returns? Anybody? No returns?
Oh, Stacy.
Stacy,
She's like
why do you have
hesitantly raising her hand?
No, but I'm real new though. I haven't.
Okay.
sold time,
Okay.
But I've never had anything returned.
Okay, so no, but I mean, do you allow returns?
Oh, I don't know. Do I allow? She helped me set up.
Okay.
Probably.
Okay,
Yeah.
so not ever having a return, good for you. But what I mean is, there are people who say no returns allowed. That is not in your best interest business-wise, in my opinion. Now, Alan, Patty, Bill, they've heard me all say this a million times. Everything I say up here is just my opinion. You do not have to agree with me. In my,
You have to agree with me.
okay, see the snarky one. In my opinion, you do not have to have, but having no returns I think is a bad business decision, right? Having paid returns, having paid buyer returns is good as long as this is low. As
That's what we were
soon
talking
as
about with
this,
me. I have buyer paid returns, but I'm still in the low.
correct, she's right, that's exact, we were an average, both of us.
Yeah.
And it was because, but if hers jumped up, I would turn on free return shipping, free returns. Does that make sense? Because people lie. Because how do you get a free return on eBay? By saying the item is not as described. So what you want to avoid is giving, nobody has the option of getting it back to you no matter what, so they're gonna lie. So if that number starts to creep up, you wanna have free returns. Because that is one of the only ways you can combat it. Because then people don't, now, some people are still gonna lie because they're old school and they think this is the way to get a free return? Yes, but most people are just gonna be like, doesn't fit, or whatever.
I only get considering I do charge for returns, I get maybe a couple iNads a year. And they're usually garbage, as we know, a lot of them are garbage, but I don't sweat it because it's such a small percentage, it's not worth arguing about it, I'm just, whatever.
So this is just a picture of me and Crystal at Posh Fest last year. This is her place that she bought with her reselling money. So this is her warehouse that she has. Kind of different than what Vikki and I do in our house. She has a place, and this is a door so she can bring in a truck, things like that. It's a pretty cool setup. And I think that key takeaways for me, you want to be building a reselling business that is adaptive but also has strong foundation. You really want to be thinking about your account health. You really want to be worried about the parameters of what you're going to do, because I think that will help you going forward. And one of those is taking returns, having all the business policies set up, doing things like that. But I also think having an inventory system from the get-go is very important. And if you don't have one, start one immediately. Okay, your key takeaway.
That's really, you said a lot of them. I think that making sure that if you're trying to grow or you're looking for growth, tap into the resources like seller meetups, like a mastermind call. You want to surround yourself with like-minded individuals. You want to surround yourself with people that do their business the right way, that maybe you want to emulate, you want to learn from. I think it's essential to find a partner in this, whether it's, I'm very fortunate, I have my wife that does the same thing, and we're both very hard workers. So we have each other to bounce off of, but we also have a huge network and community of resellers and friends. Trish was the one that finally convinced me to, hire help 5-6 years ago. I had been doing it myself, and I was maxed out. I was maxed out at what I could do and what I could achieve by myself, and that's usually when you decide you've got to grow. And I was very hesitant to hire someone and spend the money and the investment that it is, at least for the first few months, before you start to see that return on the investment. And it's a little scary. And you're like, I don't know if they're going to do it well enough. I'm a bit of a control freak. I don't know if anybody knows that about me. It's really hard to let go of stuff. And Trish, and I will say this again, but Trish taught me, the 80-20 rule. You control 80% of it, you got to let go of 20%. Let go of the stuff that is not as important, figure out what that stuff might be. Maybe the photos are not exactly as crisp as you want them. Maybe they don't lay it quite the right way. Let it go, get it listed. And that's where you're gonna make the money. And the analysis paralysis is what holds us all back. So
Right.
that's my takeaway.
I agree completely.
Be willing to accept help, be willing to ask for help.
So I agree with all of that. And if you guys have any questions, we'd be more than happy to answer them.
And we want you to grab water and a
Oh
little
yeah,
snack.
yeah. We have
But
snacks.
also
We
this
have
swag.
swag.
Take one of everything if you want. There's plenty up here.
I went and got more cups so everybody can have them because they're freaking awesome.
They're really good cups. The only thing, only one of it is stickers because we just don't have a lot of them. But if anybody wants a sticker with our faces on
And these are from eBay. eBay sent all this swag, really great swag, good for them. And this, I mean, look at this.
wow.
I know. And it comes with some kind of, you get a free accessory. I do not know what you get to do with this thing, but it's pretty cool.
Yeah, those we call those the Fanleys, the fake Stanleys, but they weren't as good as a Stanley.
And it's got 2 sizes of straws, so depending on what you're...
They're all green though, they're all the same color. And then we also wanted to introduce,
Oh yeah, so before we stop talking, before we take questions, I wanted to introduce Faith and Paul. They own My Reseller Genie, and they have a brand new baby. And they're gonna come up here.
Right.
Hey everyone, I'm Paul. This is my wife Faith.
Yeah.
If there's any stains on my shirt, it's probably from Felix.
Yes.
blame it on the child.
Yep, the child/intern.
Slide, intern.
So, has anyone heard of My Reseller Genie before? Couple folks. Okay. Anyone using My Reseller Genie?
Oh, look at this.
Great, this is a perfect room. So, all right, what we do is bookkeeping software that's built specifically for resellers. So, who had fun last tax season?
Is tax season over?
Yeah.
Taxes yet.
Me.
Good job.
All right.
No, I thought you said who hasn't. Me.
I see.
File my extension.
All right,
My
there you go.
extension, I did
There you
that.
go.
Yeah, so let me ask this. Who's using spreadsheets to account for their business right now? All right, got a lot of spreadsheet users. How about pen and paper? Sheepishly raising your hand. QuickBooks? All right, a couple QuickBooks folks. Anything else that I didn't cover that y'all are using?
My cross lister has like a component.
Okay, all right, cool.
Bold, you know.
Yeah, so I mean, a lot of resellers fall into the category of using spreadsheets, which is an effective solution for a while. Where it starts to become a problem is once it's just taking up hours and hours of your time and you're just stressing and like formulas are breaking all the time. And it's just like, my gosh, I spend so much time just entering accounting information. So that's kind of our sweet spot. We provide a solution which adds some automation to your accounting process. We support both the accrual inventory method if you're tracking your inventory, as well as the cash inventory method if you just expense it as soon as you buy it.
And if that all sounds like gibberish, don't worry, we will help answer those questions for you too.
And we integrate with eBay, Poshmark, and Mercari right now, as well as bank accounts. So if any of that sounds interesting to you, you think it might potentially save you some time doing something that you don't like so much, so you can spend a little bit more time on something that you do like doing, we'd love to talk to you some more.
I'll just wrap it up really, really fast. So I have a background in reselling. My husband has a background in accounting, and so we created this software because we saw that there was a huge need in the reselling community. I started off using spreadsheets. I am not a spreadsheet person. It gives me a headache. And my first tax season was just a nightmare as well. So anyway, we created this to really, really help you guys. We have some pamphlets up here and stuff, but if there's anything that we can do for you, if you have any questions or anything, we would love to answer that. And yeah, we're excited.
Thank you,
guys
Faith.
so
Thank
much.
you, Paul.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.